This is our pre-calculus 1 trigonometry in class practice number 1. That's a mouthful. And this one we're going to talk about what everything in the equation form of sine and cosine. That's what we're going to basically focus on. So I want you to remember that when you have an equation, usually how it's set up is you're going to have f of x or y equals, you're going to have your amplitude first, you're going to have sine or cosine, and then you're going to have your frequency, your angle, whatever it is, in this case would be x, plus your midline. And if you'll notice, the one thing that's not in here that's listed here is your period. Your period, you need to have a graph in order to find the period. So all the rest of these, amplitude comes first, the frequency comes next, and the midline's last. And there's sometimes I'll put the midline up front, and I'll tell you that in a minute. So the amplitude is how high or low from the midline, okay? That's what that is. The midline is the high plus the low of your graph divided by 2. Your frequency is how many do you see in 2 pi? How many curves? And the period is how long does it take you to see it? Okay? The other thing I wanted to let you know is frequency, sorry about that, frequency and period are inverses of each other. So in order to find out the period from the frequency, the period is either 2 pi over your frequency, or I've seen people do the period times the frequency equals 2 pi. Okay? So we're going to start and go through all of these, and hopefully this will help you when you go to do this. So the first one here, the amplitude is 1. And the other thing about amplitude, it's never, ever, ever negative. So that you'll always see it in an absolute value. The frequency is what is in front of your variable, and that's a 1. So that means I'm going to only see one curve. The period is going to be 2 pi over my frequency, or 2 pi. And since I'm not adding or subtracting anything, my midline is y equals 0. So that's what we're going to do with all of these. This one is 3 sine x. As you can see, the 3's here for the amplitude means it's a vertical stretch. I have 1 for frequency. My period is 2 pi over my frequency, or is 2 pi. And again, I'm not adding or subtracting anything, so my midline is y equals 0. Now I'm going to start doing all sorts of things to our poor graph. So the first one here, if it has a negative there, that means our graph has been inverted or reflected over the x-axis, if you will. So I know my amplitude's 4, but it's not negative because the negative just means it's been reflected over the x-axis. So it's going to, your graph is going to go down and then up. If it's sine, it's going to come down. It's the opposite of what it is. And this is my midline is y equals 2. Okay, the frequency is 2 pi, and period is 2 pi over 2 pi, so my period is 1. The next one, this one has been vertically compressed because my amplitude is 0.5. My frequency is 1/3, so that means I see 1/3 of the graph, so it stands to reason that it'll take 3 times longer. So if I take 2 pi, divide it by 1/3, that's like the same thing as saying 2 pi times 3, so it's going to take us 6 pi to see them, and the midline is y equals 0, or see that one curve, I should say. Here's what I was talking about previously. Here's my midline, so I'm going to actually move it back here and put a +4. I have a negative here, so this graph also has been inverted or reflected over the x-axis. So my amplitude is a positive 1/4. My frequency is 2. 2 pi over 2 is pi, and my midline is y equals 4. So I hope you're getting the idea how this works. This one right here, my amplitude is 1. My frequency is 4. My period is 2 pi over 4, or pi over 2. And I have a -3 here, so y equals -3 is my midline, or my middle part of my graph. Okay. This one, cosine, my amplitude is 1. My frequency is pi over 2. My period is 2 pi over 2. or 4, because you're saying 2 pi times 2 over pi, and the pi's cancel out, and my midline is y equals 1. A few more to go here, guys. So if you want to stop this and come back and see if you did it right, go for it. Amplitude's 3, frequency's 2, 2 pi over 2 is my period, or pi, and then y equals 5 is my midline. So this poor graph was stretched vertically, compressed horizontally because I see 2 curves in 2 pi here, so my period is pi, which is half of 2 pi, and it's been shifted up because my middle is 5. This one here is my amplitude's a half, my frequency is 2 pi, my period is 2 pi over 2 pi, or 1, and my midline is y equals negative 10. This poor graph got shoved all the way down to y equals negative 10. And my last one is been inverted or reflected over the x-axis. My amplitude is 2, so it's vertically stretched. Half, so it's horizontally compressed. Whoops. 2 pi over a half is 4 pi. So it takes me twice as long to see. And y equals 0 is my midline. So this is just a little practice on what everything in your equation stands for. So I hope this helps.